All of his stuff looked good, so probably too good because it was probably snug, but he was different in everything that he did. He locked up different. He locked up snug.
Hey, this is your Olympic hero, Kurt Angle, and you're listening to Snug Wrestling. Oh, it's true. It's damn true.
Hello again. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the show. Welcome back to Snug Wrestling. Like always, I'm Edgar. I'm your host. And today we're going to be talking about mostly AEW stuff, AEW rumors, updates, and some of the things that we saw on Dynamite yesterday. And it seems like recently another former AEW employee came out and made some comments about his experience working for AEW. And of course, some of the comments that this former AEW employee said were a little too honest for a lot of people. A lot of people didn't like what he had to say about the company. So we're going to be talking about those comments, and it just seems like more and more former AEW employees are coming out and saying a lot of things, a lot of crazy things. So we are going to be going over that. And my special guest for today is none other than the one and the only Mike Dinero from the Wrestling DeLorean Podcast. What's going on, bro? Welcome back.
What's good, man? What's good? Glad to be back. I had so much fun last time. I had a lot of fun having you on my show, so this is long overdue.
Yes, it is, man. I've been trying to get you on the show, but you have a really, really good reason for that.
Yeah.
Once again, congratulations. You
Thank you.
got another baby boy. So shout out to you and your family.
Thank you. I appreciate that, man.
But it's good to have you back on the IWC.
Most definitely. It's good to be back, man. I felt like I was so out of the loop for the last couple weeks. I just started catching back up this week, so I'm definitely excited to talk about a lot of the shit I saw, especially last night.
Yeah, so you've been out for quite some time, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I missed the Bash at Berlin show. I saw All In and then saw nothing until All Out. So
oh shit.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then watched Dynamite last night. So definitely there's been a big 2-week gap of nothing. But if there's anything I've been watching, it's AEW. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, man, I hope Mike, I know he's been super busy with the baby and all, but and a lot of the things that we saw yesterday. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions about the show. So we are going to be going over that. Other than that, man, I haven't spoken to you since I think your famous interview with Dijak, which, by the way, if you haven't heard it, Mike had an interview with Dijak right after he was released by the WWE, right?
Yeah, I was his second interview. I think he was released that Friday. I had him on that Monday. So yeah, I got him on pretty quick, which was awesome.
Yeah, it was right after it happened. It was perfect timing. And we heard a lot of good shit on there. So if you guys haven't heard the interview with Dijak, definitely go check it out. But yeah, other than that, man, anything else, man, that you want to share with us? What else have you been up to over there in Wrestling DeLorean? Anything good coming up?
Yeah, we got a lot of good shit coming up. Actually, tomorrow we're talking about the Evasion pay-per-view from 2001. Next week we're going to be talking more in depth on AEW, but then on next Friday we're going to be talking about Canadian Stampede in your house. So we're going to be doing a lot of classic show reviews. We're going to have a lot more of the modern news also, and I'm working on some more interviews. So definitely are trying to finalize some details before I make any announcements.
Anything you can tell us? Release? Give us a scoop.
I'm working on somebody who, let's just say I'm working on somebody who may be on WWE's radar pretty soon. So.
Oh, nice.
I'm excited for that.
Hell yeah. Looking forward to hearing that. And I know we said we're going to be talking about AEW, but before we talk about AEW, I do want to bring up something WWE related, because I just feel like this was so ridiculous that I just had to bring it up. WWE pulled some crazy, I want to say Vince McMahon type shit. When I read this, I'm like, this is something that was so cruel in my eyes that I'm just like, is Vince McMahon still in the WWE? And I'm talking about the whole bracelet situation that happened recently in the WWE. Did you get a chance to, or did you hear about this? What happened recently?
Yeah, I saw that they put a replica of the CM Punk bracelet on their website that you could buy. The one that says AJ and Larry, and the maker of the bracelet who gifted that to CM Punk was pretty pissed off about it, as she should be. I mean,
Yeah.
if you made something for someone and you decide to mass produce it, you should get paid for that. But I see that they quickly, course corrected and made it just a CM Punk bracelet as opposed to Larry and AJ. But yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you give her flowers like that? That's ridiculous. I would have made a deal with her like, hey, yeah, we're going to mass produce this and you're going to get whatever amount, or you're going to get a percentage of it, but nothing. And I don't blame her for being a little pissed off.
Yeah, dude. And not even informing this poor girl. I don't know how old she is. She could be a lot older, but I mean, if she's making little friendship bracelets, like I assume she's like very young. And then WWE is just gonna say, you know what? We're just gonna fucking make a whole bunch of these and sell them on our merch site and just make. I mean, how much money could WWE? They're not getting rich off of this little bracelet thing, right? I mean, the thing. First of all, I think it was on sale on the website for like $10,
Yeah,
which is fucking crazy. Because I mean,
it's
this
beads.
thing you can
Let's be real. It's beads and a rubber band.
you can make this shit out of like 50 cents, but they're selling it for $10. They don't tell this poor girl about it. And when she finds out, she goes on Twitter and she calls them out. She called out the WWE and said this was just supposed to be a gift for CM Punk, not the whole world. This was a tweet that that they sent out. And as soon as that happened, I guess they took it down. They took it down from the site, but then they put it back out again and they just changed the beads again instead of saying AJ Lee. And now just says CM Punk, right?
Yeah.
Okay. But I was just like, how fucked up is that? Like this poor girl. And they, like you said, they could have just let her know or just be like, hey, we're going to do this and maybe, I don't know, donate the money for like a good cause or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, they're just like, we're just going to take this little kid's idea and
Profiteer.
make as much. Yeah. Just make hella money off of this. Make hella money off this little girl's idea and no one's going to know. I don't know.
It's very Vince McMahon-esque, like you said. That does seem like a Vince McMahon idea. And hey, Triple H is still in the family. You never know. He might have gave him a couple tips over dinner or some shit. So who knows?
Oh, right on, man. Well, yeah, I thought that was fucking ridiculous, but hopefully it all works out for the little fan. But let's go move over to AEW. So earlier I mentioned that there was a former AEW employee that came out and he was asked about, the reasons why he left AEW. And I saw this as he was just being honest. I didn't think like, okay, if he's being asked what his experience was like in AEW truthfully, I mean, there's no reason to lie about it. He doesn't work for AEW anymore. And I'm talking about Mark Henry. Mark Henry recently left AEW and he had some things to say, but like before I read Mark Henry's comments, I want to ask you, Mike, your opinion on this because I hear a lot about these things. Like, for example, what's that lawsuit that's happening right now with like
Oh yeah, with Kevin Kelly and the Tate brothers. Yeah.
Yes, all that stuff. And it's like, at one point, do you think like we as fans got to be like, like really question what is going on behind closed doors? Or do you feel like, hey, we shouldn't care, this shouldn't matter, and let's just enjoy wrestling, pal?
I mean, personally, I always think that we should start worrying about AEW behind closed doors because this has been happening for years. The moment someone is released or leaves AEW, they don't always have nice things to say about being released. We go back to Chavo Guerrero, who wasn't even notified that he's not going to be used anymore. He just assumed he wasn't going to be used when he wasn't in contact with them anymore.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who hate on whoever gives their truth, but at the end of the day, that's their truth. I don't think Mark Henry went into this with an agenda to bash AEW. He went into this to just say his side of the story and what happened. I think if this was an isolated situation, it would be like, all right, yeah, whatever. This might just be his situation and let's enjoy AEW. But this seems to be the case for almost everybody who is either released or leaves the company. They don't have the most flattering things to say about the company or how they were used or how the whole backstage works. So I do think that it's a little worrisome, especially when you see the TV product and the ratings starting to dwindle and then you see attendance starting to go down. You do start to worry about, like, is there issues backstage? Is there trouble in paradise? Especially for someone like me, I love AEW. I want to see AEW stick around, but it does make me wonder, like, what's going on backstage, that there's a lot of negative opinions and a lot of, backstage drama. So there's been backstage drama for a lot of years. People like to blame CM Punk for all the shit, but CM Punk left and there's still backstage drama. There's still fights between Britt Baker and MJF. There's still fights between, what was it, Andrade and Sammy when Andrade was there. Yeah. So it's like, let's not blame CM Punk for being this cancer for AEW when we take him out of the situation. There's still a lot of backstage drama. I do think that people should be they don't have to worry about it, but I think that people should question what is actually going on backstage.
Not only just question, but also be honest with themselves, because I'm glad that you, as like a AEW fan, are like, let's be real here. Like there's some shit going down back there that, maybe as fans, we shouldn't really worry about, the politics or, what's happening backstage, but maybe that is affecting the show that we're seeing as fans as well,
Yeah.
We also, like you brought up CM Punk, and there was an issue this year at All Out with, I think it was like a producer and another talent that caused the security guards to rush, but I guess it was handled that day or something like that. But you see Tony Khan come out in front of the cameras and everything's all good. There's no issues here. And then we hear all this stuff backstage and it's just like, what's really going on? Like, we never get like the truth. We always get the runaround as fans.
Tony Khan is not good at answering any questions. Like, he's very PR trained. So at these scrums or at these media calls, if you notice, you can ask Tony Khan anything and it's still going to come back to, oh, well, Dynamite this past week was great and Collision's great and we're doing great. We're doing record numbers. You could say, hey, what about this situation that happened or that situation that happened? Oh, well, Dynamite's doing great. He's never going to be upfront. So it makes it even more fishy. Like, what does he have to hide? If there's a situation that goes down in WWE, let's say, and is brought to everyone's attention during a media call, they will answer questions about situations. We see them shut down questions about like the Vince McMahon situation, but they would comment and say, hey, we don't agree with whatever, but we're going to move forward. Blah, blah. Tony Khan doesn't do that. He just tries to turn the light to be, oh, well, let's talk about how great the product is instead of ever mentioning any issues.
That's a good point. Yeah, I remember recently, I think it was after Bash in Berlin, Cody Rhodes got put on the spot when he was asked about, Vince McMahon. And he was like, you know what? Honestly, he's like, I don't really know all the details, so I can't really comment on it because I don't know what's going on, which to me is a lot better than, oh, everything is great and this and that and the other, and just, giving the runaround instead of just answering honestly. But yeah, it's very suspicious. I feel like it's kind of hard for me to believe some of the things Tony Khan says, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But also, like, a lot of the AEW fans too, I feel like they're always like, oh, well, this person that left AEW, they're just bitter, or this, or they're just that, or they're just mad because they don't work for AEW. And I think Mark Henry was getting a lot of that after what he said. And I'm going to read the quote that Mark Henry had here. And this is from the Huge Pop podcast. I just want to be sure that, I give them a shout out for this, where Mark Henry says, you know, they asked him the reason behind his exit, and he said, tightening the screws requires you to be able to break your toolkit out. So there was a point where I realized that I wasn't there to tighten the screws. I was there for name recognition and visibility. And that's a horrible place to feel if you're a creative. He said that he didn't want to cross as he was whining or complaining, but those are just facts. And he said, what else did he say? Yeah, that he knew that he was going to get a lot of like, oh, he's just mad, he's just bitter. Did you get a chance to read this? And what were your thoughts when you read the comments that Mark Henry was making about, you know, the toolkit and not being basically not being able to be creative?
I mean, I think it's like I said, when I read this, I did get a chance to read this. I just think he's telling his truth. I don't see any reason why he should, you know, be silent about why he left AEW if he's asked why he left. It's not like he went out of his way to put out a tweet saying, hey, you know, I'm just going to speak my truth right now on Twitter and tell you why I left AEW. He was asked the question, he answered honestly. I do remember when he was brought into AEW and it was announced that he was going to be brought into AEW. And then same thing with Paul White when he was brought into AEW. They were on Busted Open Radio, and Mark Henry said that this is a great opportunity to show a different side of me, a more creative side of me. And he made it clear that he was being brought in to help out, as opposed to just being another name from WWE that was being brought in for recognition. So I could see if he was brought in with an agenda and was told this is what you're going to be here for, and then they never use you for that reason, and that's it, you would be pissed off too. I mean, what was Mark Henry's role in AEW? To be on Rampage and say it's now time for the main event. Like,
oh, that's
the only reason that you brought in Mark Henry, former Hall of Famer, former world champion. Like, that's why you're bringing in Mark Henry. I can see why you're pissed off with that. I mean, I don't know. I always felt like they could have done a lot more with Mark Henry. I could have saw him as like Powerhouse Hobbs manager. I thought you could have him come in as even a commentary. He's very articulate. We see that on Busted Open Radio. They just never really did nothing with him. Just like they do very little with Paul White. And it seems like he's just another guy as well who was brought in just to be another name that they could say, hey, look who we have on our team. Look who we have on our side. So I could see why he's a little bitter with that. I have no problem with that. There's an issue with AEW fans. I love AEW, but AEW has real tribalistic fans. No matter who is the name, it could be The Rock gets brought into AEW. And then The Rock leaves AEW and he's a little bitter about it. The AEW fans will be like, oh, well, The Rock was a jobber anyway. Like, they're going to do this about everybody. It's very tribalistic, and it doesn't matter the name. They're going to do this about everybody. It doesn't matter who leaves. That's why, you know, they like to talk about CM Punk being a cancer. CM Punk was the highest rated guy in that show. CM Punk brought in more eyes and more pay-per-view buys to that show than anybody else before. So it's just tribalistic behavior.
Man, if only all the, you know, the wrestling fans and the AEW fans thought like that, the world would be a much better place, you know, but unfortunately that's not the case. But yeah, you're absolutely right, man. Paul White, he was one of those names that I remember thinking, like, where the fuck has he been? What does he even do? Are they just there to like collect the paycheck? I mean, we don't know. Again, at least that's what it seems like to us from the outside in. But then, you know, you hear all these stories too about like the bad apples, you know, that they don't want to take any advice or they don't want to listen and this, that, and the other. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Mark Henry next. Do you see him maybe going back to the WWE?
I can see him being a manager. I know, if I'm not mistaken, just recently Mark Henry's son was signed to the WWE. I can see him coming in as like a mentor or manager for that. So for sure.
That is true. I forgot about that. That's a good point.
Here's a man who's been around for many different generations and eras, right? He was there during the New Generation. He was there for the Attitude Era. He was there for the Ruthless Aggression Era, for the PG era. I mean, if you have somebody who's been around for that many years and through that many different time periods, that's someone I would want on my team because he brings knowledge and there's wealth in knowledge. I don't know why you would just bringing him in as just, you know, another name or a face. and not even a face. It's not like he was out there pushing media or doing anything for AEW. They never had him out there really pushing AEW. It's just another guy that they throw backstage with their 6,000, personnel and coaches and agents that really just get lost in the shuffle.
Yes. And it's funny too, like they have all these people, or they had all these people like Mark Henry, but a lot of those guys, a lot of those veterans seem to be leaving. Like Arn Anderson left, Mark Henry left, and they had all these guys back there, but then also it feels like there isn't really a whole lot of agents controlling the matches because of all the freedom AEW has. You see all these guys just go out there and just do their thing, which it's cool most of the time, but sometimes it's like, man, some of these guys, they probably need a little bit more guidance, it seems like. So it's just like,
yeah,
I don't know, man. I just wish I knew what the fuck was going on back there. So maybe, I don't know, you can hit up one of your connects, Mike, somewhere in there and tell them to give us the scoop. What is going on backstage? That's what we want to know.
That would be something that I think that I would never get. I know AEW runs a very, very tight ship where they're not going to allow anybody to know what the hell's going on backstage. But
that's very true. Well, all right. Now that we got the gossip, the politics and all that stuff out the way, let's talk about the actual show, what we see in front of the cameras and what we know. And this is when I'm going to start to question a lot of the things that we saw last night on Dynamite, specifically this thing with Jon Moxley and Darby Allin. And I'm going to need a whole lot of help here, Mike, to understand what is going on. Okay, so let's start with this. So Darby Allin, he's the number one contender for the AEW World Heavyweight Champion because of the Royal Rampage that he won back in like July, I think it was,
like
right?
July, yeah.
And then, but before that, he also got a title shot. Darby got a title shot for the TNT Championship also, that he recently lost at All In to Jungle Boy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm good there.
Yep.
All right. So then now it turns out that Darby Allin is going to face Jon Moxley, and he's going to put his number one contender shot on the line at Grand Slam. Why the fuck would Darby Allin do this? Why would he agree to this? I'm a little bit confused here, Mike. What did you see last night? Because what I saw last night left me kind of wondering, like, why the fuck is Darby even considering this? I don't know. Help me out here.
I don't know why they're not going with the title match, right? So when you have Darby Allin versus Bryan Danielson signed, and you change it to Darby Allin versus Jon Moxley, that tells me that Bryan Danielson's not going to be able to make the show, or he needs to take time off or for injury or whatever. But then next segment, you book a Bryan Danielson match on the same show that he was supposed to have a match with Darby Allin. Makes no sense to me at all. Like, I know Darby's character is he's reckless and does, questionable shit. Maybe this is another questionable decision, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think you need to have Darby Allin versus Jon Moxley at Grand Slam. Why not have Darby Allin versus Jon Moxley next week on Dynamite and continue to have a title match at Grand Slam, since Bryan Danielson is booked for that show anyway? It makes no sense to me. I like what they're doing with the Jon Moxley stuff. I do like the whole, the heel turn, and if there's a mentor, I think he mentioned numerous times, my mentor. A lot of people are saying that this could be how they bring in Shane McMahon, which would be very
Are you one of those people that believes it's going to be Shane McMahon?
I mean, I hope so. Because going back to the last segment, what we were talking about, I do think having a McMahon there, I'm not saying any McMahon, trust me, I don't want Vince there, but I think having a McMahon there could start to tighten the screws, like Mark Henry was saying. I think having someone there who been a part of the most successful wrestling company of all time for many years, for as long as he's been alive.
Oh yeah.
I think that's somebody who could bring a lot of structure to AEW. And I think if you look at what AEW lacks, it's structure. So I think it would be cool to have him on screen, but I think it'll be more important to have him backstage. But if it is Shane McMahon, I'm pretty cool with that. I like that. But yeah, this whole Darby Allin shit doesn't make sense to me. Like, why all of a sudden, you know, are you going to have a match that's advertised, not give people that match, and then have the guy who may not be there now in another match, and then the guy who was supposed to be there? If I'm Darby Allin, I'm like, fuck Nigel McGuinness. Like, I was signed for a title match. I'm not going to wrestle John Moxley. If Bryan Danielson's going to be there, I'm going to be there. That's the match that we had signed. Let's have that match.
Yeah.
Now we're not having it.
And so that match that might happen between Nigel McGuinness and Danielson is also going to be at Grand Slam.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. But the whole point...
I'm happy about that, but I have personal reasons why I'm happy about that. I'll go into it after, but yeah.
Yeah, we're going to get into that too. But the whole point of Darby Allin having this match versus Moxley at Grand Slam was because Moxley damn near almost murdered Danielson after All Out, or his match at All Out, and took him out of the equation. So he's not going to be able to compete at Grand Slam. So that was the point of having Darby versus Moxley, right? But then Danielson's going to wrestle Nigel McGuinness, which hasn't been announced yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen.
They showed the graphic last night during the main event. They had on the little corner there.
Oh, so it's
Nigel
official.
It's official. Made it more confusing.
Okay. All right. So I'm glad I'm not the only one that's looking at this like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah.
Because the other thing too about this whole thing is, like, before All Out, Moxley showed up to Dynamite and called out Darby Allin, right, in a promo, and just like walked out, and like that was it. I don't really remember the promo, but do you remember the reason why Moxley called out Darby in the first place?
Moxley just been very vague. He said that Darby Allin, we need to talk. He didn't even want to wrestle him. We need to talk. And then the week after, he's like, "Where's Darby? We need to talk. We're not trying to fight. We just need to talk." And then, you know, also I believe that was the week after All In too, that Moxley originally called out Darby Allin, and then Moxley and Darby Allin were not booked for All Out. You could have had that match at All Out and then go forward with the story of whatever you want to do. I don't know. It just feels very rushed and very weird. Like, why all of a sudden is there going to be all this like shifting around with the card? The only match that they've been announcing for Grand Slam for the last couple of weeks was Darby Allin versus Bryan Danielson. And then all of a sudden we're out 2 weeks and, hey, we're going to have Bryan Danielson in a different match and Darby in a different match. It's really confusing.
Okay. And then I started thinking more about this, and I was like, okay, so me trying to make sense of all this, I'm like, John Moxley attacked Danielson. Was the reason for that attack, or that heel turn, or double heel turn, because I'm pretty sure Moxley was already a heel, was to take Danielson out of that equation so he doesn't have his match versus Darby, and then try to take the number one contender from Darby Allin to make himself get the title match, right?
Yeah.
But then I was like, that doesn't make sense either, because how would Moxley know that Darby Allin would agree to give him the number one contender? You know, so either way, I was trying to look at this. I'm like, and I don't mean to sound like, oh, Edgar, you're just an AEW hater. No, this genuinely, I think, does not make any fucking sense.
I think that there was a possibility to run back Nigel McGuinness and Bryan Danielson from their legendary feud. And I think that Tony Khan saw the opportunity to do that in a stadium like Arthur Ashe Stadium and said, you know what? I know I already announced this, but now I gotta, I want it at that stadium in New York. Last time they had a match against each other was in New York. I was there, right? It was at Hammerstein Ballroom for Ring of Honor 2009. So I could see maybe him saying, like,
for real,
right,
that was a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh, I'll go into it when we talk about Nigel, but Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite feuds in wrestling history. Nigel versus Bryan.
Okay.
They had awesome matches. So
That
I could
makes
see him. Yeah,
yeah,
it
that
makes
makes sense
sense.
that they kind of just like backpedaled.
Yeah, and I could see him saying like, "Damn, we already announced Darby versus Bryan. How are we gonna get out of this?" So I do feel like there could have been other ways to do it, better ways to do it, because the shit I saw last night was very confusing. Like
Okay.
I'm happy that we're getting Nigel versus Bryan. I'm gonna be at the
Okay.
show, so I'm very happy for that, right?
You're going to
But
Grand Slam?
yeah,
Nice.
I'm excited
Nice.
for it, but it just the way they went about it was just very confusing.
Okay, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one too, because I was like trying to make yeah. Okay, perfect. Now, my next question is, who do you think is gonna win out of Darby Allin and Moxley? Do you think that Darby Allin is gonna get beat and somehow John Moxley and Danielson are is gonna be the next title shot, the next title match?
I mean, it would make sense to go that route, but
Mhm.
also if you look at the next pay-per-view being Wrestle Dream and it's going to be in Washington State, Darby Allin's from Washington. Bryan Danielson's
Mm.
from Washington. So you would think that the better main event would to be Bryan Danielson versus Darby Allin in front of both their home states. But I don't
Mhm.
know. I mean, now how do you prolong this feud between Danielson and Moxley when Moxley legit tried to murder Bryan Danielson? How do you not want, that feud to take place now? I see Bryan Danielson probably going against Moxley at the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
So I do think that Darby Allin loses his shot at Grand Slam.
Damn, that's fucking wild. And you know
Fucked up.
what? Huh?
It's fucked up.
It is, dude. And also if Moxley did all this, he planned all this, not just him, but the whole BCC were behind it, and they came up with this big evil plan to take out Danielson. And the whole point of this was for Moxley to get a title shot. Wouldn't it just been better to just be like to tell Danielson, "Hey Danielson, I know you're on your way out. I know you're about to retire. You're my boy. Let me wrestle you one last time before you retire and put the title on the line, and then, start building from there." We all know John Moxley is a fucking lunatic, right? No pun
Yeah.
intended. You know, he starts doing like little sneaky shit, maybe during the match, starts healing, getting heat on Danielson, starts maybe cheating here and there. And I don't know. I thought maybe that would have been, that's how I would have booked it if we're going to fantasy book this whole thing. Because this right here is just, like we said, time and time again, confusing as fuck.
And very unnecessary. I feel like this is very convoluted and just unnecessary.
All right, let's talk about Nigel McGuinness now. So, um, we saw Nigel McGuinness at All In, right?
Yeah.
Got the big pop. He came out, and he's been kind of teasing for the past few months. Is he going to return? Is he going to maybe wrestle Danielson one day? So when he came out to All In, it gave a lot of people hope that, okay, maybe we will finally get this match. But after seeing what he did in the ring at All In, I don't know, man. I'm not familiar with him. You can tell me what he was like when you used to see him wrestle, but I wasn't very impressed. Not to the point where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to see this guy in the ring with Danielson. Danielson, one of the best wrestlers in the world. And I don't think Nigel McGuinness is nowhere near that level, at least not anymore.
Yeah, he
So,
definitely used to be. He was definitely in that conversation back in the day, but I
okay.
believe he had to retire early because of hepatitis B. So he was out for maybe since 2011. So
Mm,
it's been a lot of years. It's been 13 years since we've seen him in the ring. Yeah, just I said it. It's a backstory, right? A little backstory about this. I remember back in 2007, right? Ring of Honor had pay-per-views on TV. They were pre-tape pay-per-views. And I remember this was around the time I was like starting to fall out with WWE. TNA was a little for me at the time. Like I was a TNA fan, but it was not, something that like was must watch for me. Started to get more into MMA and the UFC. So like I was starting to phase wrestling out. And I remember hearing about Ring of Honor and they have this pay-per-view. And I was like, all right, whatever, I'll purchase it. It was like $10. And I remember the main event being Bryan Danielson versus Nigel McGuinness for the ROH champion. I was like, all right, I don't know either of these two. Like, was this a waste of money? Like, I'm not familiar with them. I watched that matchup, and still to this day, it's one of my favorite matches. That was the match. I say it all the time. That was the matchup that saved my fandom for professional wrestling, right?
Wow.
They went on to have a storybook rivalry. They had about like 6 or 7 matches in ROH, every match being an absolute banger. Nigel McGuinness, a lot of the times, getting the better of Bryan Danielson. I got to meet Nigel McGuinness a couple times when I would go to Ring of Honor shows, and was always a class act, always awesome. So I always wanted to see Nigel come back, and I always wanted to see Nigel get back in the ring with Bryan. It just never seemed like a possibility with Bryan being in the WWE and on top of the world. And at the time, Nigel's still doing like Ring of Honor commentary and retired. I don't think that there was ever a real opportunity to have that matchup again. But when they announced this matchup last night, and me knowing that I'm going, like it just felt like, wow, this was the matchup that saved my fandom for wrestling.
It's a
like
full circle moment for you, yeah.
For sure. So I'm excited for that. Like I'd much rather that match than Bryan Danielson and Darby Allin. So even though the storyline doesn't make sense, I'm happy that match is booked for a show that I'm going to, just for like my own personal reasons. But Nigel, like you said, Nigel's not the Nigel from 2009, right? Nigel's not the man who was breaking jaws with his lariat. So I think it's going to be a good matchup. I do think that Bryan Danielson may have to tone it down for Nigel, just because it's been many years since Nigel McGuinness had a matchup of that caliber. But yeah, I still think that they're going to be able to have a really good matchup.
I'm sure Danielson, that's one of the reasons Danielson is one of the greatest too, is because he can carry that match and still make Nigel McGuinness look good.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it'll definitely be a good match. That's going to happen at Grand Slam, and it's going to be, for like the die hardcore Ring of Honor fans like yourself that remember that type of stuff, and that's cool for the people that know that type of stuff. But for like the common like wrestling fan like myself, I'm just like, it's just an ex-commentator to me. No offense to Nigel McGuinness, but that's how I knew him. And, he's fighting against one of the best wrestlers in the world. So I don't know, man. I'm going to give it a chance for you, Mike, because you're my boy. I'm going to go in there with, an open mind. Let's call it that.
I'll send you some of their old matches, and I think it would get you very excited.
Bet. Yeah. Let's do that.
But I'll tell you this right now, that's also on AEW. If they're going to go with this matchup, they own Ring of Honor. They should have video footage explaining the rivalry, explaining why Nigel hates Bryan Danielson. I don't know if you like back in the day when Bryan Danielson first got signed to WWE, he got signed along with Nigel McGuinness, right? Nigel McGuinness did not pass his physical. Bryan Danielson did. Nigel McGuinness had a torn bicep at the time, right? So that feud got them both signed to the WWE. Bryan Danielson went on. Nigel McGuinness was released instantly because of his torn bicep. Goes to TNA as Desmond Wolfe. But that was another thing that made Nigel bitter. They could tell that story. Like, hey, we were supposed to go to the top together and you went without me or whatever. Like, you turned your back. They need to tell this story more than just, hey, bitter commentator talking shit about Bryan, and then Bryan's going to like want to get his revenge, because that's not the story that they should be telling. They should be telling that, hey, there's a lot of history between Nigel and Bryan.
Yeah, that's a good point, because all I've been hearing, at least from Dynamite, Nigel McGuinness has been talking shit about Danielson for like the past months, and now they're finally going to step in the ring, and I know that they have history, but I'm like, what's the history?
Yeah.
So yes, definitely, if you got the time to send me that stuff, and I hope AEW explains it. If not, I'm just gonna have you explain it to the world, for just record you explaining everything and then just upload that shit for the people that don't know.
Sounds good.
Yeah. All right, let's move on here. I wanted to ask you about the best thing going on in AEW, the learning tree. Chris Jericho, El
Hi
Corazón
guys.
de León. Or what is it? Corazón de León, Chris Jericho. Oh man, dude. You gotta love him or you gotta hate him. Where do you stand with this whole learning tree gimmick that we're seeing right now?
I think it's starting to grow on me. At first, it was really corny to me, but it's starting to grow on me. I always think that Chris Jericho is capable of making anything popular and get over with anything he's given. So I gave it a chance, and I'm seeing that there's a good chance that he makes this popular like any other gimmick that he had. But
Yeah.
I don't know about running it back with Orange Cassidy. I hated that feud when it happened back in the day, and like, what's the whole purpose of the feud? Hey, you owe me $7,000 because you poured orange juice on my jacket. Like, we're still going with that because that was the whole basis of the feud back in the day. We're just going to run that back for the same exact reason.
Yeah, and do you think that it's possible that they're doing this thing, with the jacket and the backpack to kind of like give the jab or like the nod to the people to be like, hey, well, the guys over there, they're fighting over a bracelet. So we're gonna one up them and we're gonna fight over this backpack and this jacket. But we're gonna call this long-term storytelling because this is something that happened like 4 years ago. That's the type of energy that I'm picking up from this.
I
Like,
didn't
cause
even
why
think about that,
else?
but it makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
yeah. Um, Chris Jericho has been really busy lately. He was at All In. He lost the title to Hook, the
Mhm.
FTW championship, and I believe he was in CMLL recently also, or he's scheduled to be. One of those
Yeah.
two.
No, he showed up recently. He tagged Mystico, and that matchup is signed, I believe, this month, I think. But yeah.
Okay, so he's about to be there. Um and he's also doing this learning tree gimmick, but after seeing what happened on Dynamite, it looks like the learning tree is pretty much near the end.
Yeah.
They're teasing some issues there when Chris Jericho said, don't trust anyone. There's no wrestling in friends. There's no friends in wrestling, which Big Cass, not Big Cass, Big Bill.
Yeah. He saw
Sorry,
the look he gave him. He was like,
yeah, he's just kind of like, what the fuck? So we got that to look forward to also. But this thing, man, with Orange Cassidy, um, the $7,000 jacket. First of all, Chris Jericho, his contract, I'm sure he's making hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably millions. So I
probably,
find it
yeah.
hard to believe that he really needs $7,000 from Orange Cassidy. What did you think about that spot that they did with the quarters on the Bentley? Um, yeah, did you like that or did you even see that? What'd
No,
you
I
think?
saw it. I thought it was stupid. Like the first
Yeah.
thing I thought of was like they were trying to redo the thing with Stone Cold pouring the cement into Vince McMahon's Corvette back in the day. Like when I saw it, I was like, all right, like it's coins. At the end of the day, it's not going to ruin the fucking car. Like it didn't ruin the car. Like I don't know.
Nah.
I thought at first they were going to do something stupid like pour orange juice onto the Bentley or some shit like that. But
That probably would have been better than the coins.
yeah,
It could
like
have it could have
it
fucked up the
just
leather, the interior.
exactly. I don't know, man. It just seemed corny. They're running back a storyline that, in my opinion, didn't work when they did it the first time, and they're doing it for the same exact reason. The reason for the big feud between Cassidy and Chris Jericho was the whole orange juice on the suit last time, right? So,
Mm,
like I said, if you were going to run that back, give us another reason why they're wrestling again or they're feuding again. Have an attack on Orange Cassidy or have it for another reason instead of saying, hey, by the way, the reason why I hated you back in 2020 is still the same reason I hate you in 2024. You owe me $7,000 still. Like,
mhm.
so Chris Jericho forgot about
It
that for 4 fucking years and all of a sudden just brought it back up. Like,
Yes, yes, yes. It feels like definitely feels like they're trying to they're backtracking here. At least, in their eyes, they're like, "Oh no, this is long-term story." I'm like, "No, this is backtracking because it doesn't feel like they're doing anything new. It doesn't feel like a fresh feud. It doesn't feel like a feud that's like moving forward. It's just we're doing this again. And then they pull out the picture from the backpack. The whole thing is just, I'm sorry, like it's a joke. I don't want to call it that, but that's what it is. It's comedy, and it's not very entertaining comedy. It's just a joke. I don't know if there's any other way to really explain this.
Nah, you hit the nail on the coffin. I mean, it comes off as we have nothing for Orange Cassidy to do. We have nothing for Chris Jericho to do. Let's just run that back. It seems very lazy to me. I don't like it, especially for bringing out the picture of the best friends. What's the payoff there? Chuck Taylor legitimately got hurt, not coming back. Trent Beretta, currently injured, not coming back anytime soon. What's the payoff?
Yeah.
Like, so he misses his friends?
Yeah, and
Bully him about missing his friends?
And Orange Cassidy originally had that backpack to carry around the title, right? The international championship, right? Now he's not the champion, so he replaced it with the picture of his friends that betrayed him. I was just like, oh man, this is yeah. But yeah, did they announce when they're gonna have their match? Is that match, you see that also happening at Grand Slam? Is that what's happening?
They announced it for next week. So it's going to be a week before, which I'm sure something's going to happen where, Learning Tree gets involved and we get the Conglomerate versus Learning Tree at Grand Slam or some shit. But I'm not interested at all. It just seems like you're just throwing random shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad we're on the same page here, Mike, because yeah, dude, I talked to a lot of people and they're like, oh man, you just don't get it. You just don't understand like how great the story is and blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, all right, maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't know.
Nah, man, it's just the way the fans are. Every time I'm critical about anything of AEW, it's, oh, you're just an AEW hater. And then the moment I give them their flowers, it's, oh, well, you're just a WWE hater. I'm like, the fuck? You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So yeah. I get it all the time.
Well, cool, Mike. Hey, man, thank you so much for coming on to the show, man.
Thank you.
Like always, it's always good to have you on, man.
I appreciate it. I love coming on.
Yeah, don't be a stranger. I'll be looking forward to the next time you have me on your show. I'm gonna invite myself.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it soon.
Yeah, but yeah, tell the people before we get out of here where they can find you at.
Yeah, man. Instagram at Wrestling DeLorean Pod. TikTok at Wrestling DeLorean Pod, X at W_DeLorean Pod. I almost called it Twitter. I always call it Twitter still. X at W_DeLorean Pod. YouTube, we've been up and running with the YouTube. You can check out the Dijak interview. We have some classic interviews with Nick Gage, Homicide, Vince Russo. Definitely check out the YouTube. A lot of cool shit on the YouTube. And yeah, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on all audio platforms, Wrestling DeLorean Podcast. Fridays are very special because on Fridays, we have what we call the Passenger's Pick, where the fans get to pick the show that I will be reviewing. I put up a poll on Twitter. I give 4 shows. Whatever show is voted whatever's the most voted is the show that I'll be talking about on Friday. So yeah, like I said, this week we got WWE Invasion, where it was WWE versus ECW and WCW. Next week we have Canadian Stampede. And yeah, we're going to have more picks coming soon. So definitely a lot going down with the Wrestling DeLorean Podcast. It feels good to be back, man. I took like 2 weeks off and it was like, damn, can't wait to get back on. So
yeah, good to have you. Good to have you back, Mike. And my name is Edgar. I'm the host of Snug Wrestling. Thank you guys for listening, and we will talk soon.